I'm not the kind of person who holds a grudge. Or at least, I wasn't, until my brother laughed in my face and dropped my wallet into a sewer grate like it was some kind of joke. That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the breaking point, sure, but not the beginning. If you'd asked me a year ago if I'd ever go no contact with my own family, I would have said never. I believed in loyalty, in family bonds, in giving second chances, maybe even third or fourth. But when someone grinds your dignity into the dirt, and your own father shrugs like you deserved it, something inside you changes. That morning, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just made a decision. And by the time the sun rose, everything was already in motion. His car, his bank, his girlfriend. One by one, it all came crashing down. But let me start at the beginning, because if you don't know who I am or what kind of family I come from, none of this will make sense. My name's Jake, I'm 31, and I've always been the responsible one in the family. That's not me bragging, by the way. It's more of a curse than a compliment. I was the kid who never got in trouble, who brought home report cards with straight A's, who kept quiet at the dinner table so dad wouldn't blow up. My younger brother Tyler, though, total opposite. He was the golden boy. The boys will be boys, excuse personified. He crashed mom's Camry when he was 17 after sneaking out to meet some girl, and my parents covered the damages like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, when I accidentally scratched a neighbor's fence with my bike at 12, I had to paint their whole deck in 90-degree heat as punishment. That's the kind of dynamic we had. Tyler messed up, and I paid for it, one way or another. I moved out at 19, the day after I graduated high school. Got a scholarship, worked part-time at a campus bookstore, and never looked back. I built my life slowly, college degree, decent job in logistics, a reliable car, and eventually a modest condo. Nothing flashy. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. Tyler, on the other hand, floated. He tried community college twice and dropped out both times. Worked odd jobs, moved back home every 6 months when he couldn't pay rent. And still, my parents, mostly my dad, acted like he was a misunderstood genius who just hadn't found his path yet. The thing is, I didn't resent Tyler at first. I even helped him out a few times. Gave him a place to crash when he had a fight with a roommate. Co-signed a phone plan. Huge mistake. And once sent him $500 when he claimed his paycheck got delayed. Every time, I told myself it was just a one-off. He'd grow up eventually. But it never stopped. He took advantage, plain and simple. And I didn't fully realize how bad it was until Mom passed away. That was a year ago. Sudden aneurysm. One minute she was texting me a recipe for chicken pot pie, and the next, I was driving 4 hours to the hospital, praying she'd wake up. She didn't. Her passing shattered me. She was the only real buffer between me and the rest of the family. The only one who saw through Tyler's crap and occasionally called him out. After the funeral, everything got colder, quieter, and then, somehow worse. Dad fell into this weird state of detachment. Not sadness, not anger, just apathy. Like the only person he ever listened to was gone, and now the world just didn't matter. He started leaning more into Tyler, giving him money, letting him move back in permanently, letting him borrow the car, even though Tyler had wrecked 2 already. Meanwhile, I was barely hearing from either of them. Unless, of course, Tyler needed something. Which brings us to 2 weeks ago. That was the day he asked me for $15,000. I was at work when the call came in. I recognized the number immediately, Dad's landline. I didn't pick up. 5 seconds later, Tyler texted, "Bro, I really need to talk. Call me ASAP." Against my better judgment, I did. And of course, it wasn't really talking. It was begging, dressed up in fake urgency. "Jake, listen, man. I wouldn't ask unless it was serious. I'm starting this auto detailing business. I just need 15 grand to get the van, tools, insurance." I cut him off right there. "No." He blinked through the FaceTime screen like he didn't hear me right. "Wait, what?" Just like that. I said, "No, Tyler. You've already flaked on 2 jobs this year. You dropped out again. You owe Dad 3 grand already. I'm not giving you $15,000 to blow on some pipe dream." He stared at me, then scoffed. "Wow. So that's it? After everything I've done for you?" I almost laughed. "What exactly have you done for me, Ty?" He didn't have an answer. Just hung up. I figured that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next weekend, I had to swing by Dad's house to drop off some paperwork for Mom's estate. She'd left behind a few loose ends, accounts that needed closing, stuff with her insurance. Tyler was outside when I pulled in, leaning against the hood of Dad's car, arms crossed like he was waiting for me. I debated just backing out and coming another day, but I knew that would only prolong the drama. As I stepped out of the car, I made sure my wallet was zipped up tight in my jacket. I always kept cash on hand, old habit from when I used to deliver for DoorDash part-time. And that week I'd just hit the ATM to grab rent money for a friend I was helping out. Stupid, I know. I shouldn't have had that much on me. But I did. Tyler walked up as I headed to the door. "Hey," he said, in that fake chummy voice he used when he wanted something. I didn't stop. "Not in the mood, Ty." He followed me up the porch. "Look, I know we had words, but I was serious about the business. I got a guy who's willing to sell his whole kit for cheap, but I gotta move fast." I turned, exasperated. "You're still going on about that?" I said no. End of story. He grinned, this smug little smirk that made my skin crawl. "You always think you're better than me, don't you?" "No," I said. "I just think I'm not dumb enough to loan 15 grand to a guy who thinks kit is a business plan." He didn't take it well. His jaw tensed. His eyes flicked down to my jacket pocket. I felt something shift in the air. He shrugged and turned away, muttering something under his breath, and I figured he was done. 10 minutes later, after I'd handed off the papers to Dad, who barely looked up from his recliner, I stepped back out onto the porch. My jacket felt lighter. I checked the pocket. Empty. "Tyler," I shouted, turning toward the driveway. He was already walking down the sidewalk with his phone in hand, not even trying to look innocent. "Where's my wallet?" He turned slowly, like it was a joke. "Oh, that thing. What did you do?" He pointed toward the curb, where the storm drain gaped open like a metal mouth. "Whoops," he said, grinning. "Must have slipped." I walked over in disbelief, peered down, and yeah, there it was. Lodged between two rusted grates, barely visible, my leather wallet. The one I'd had for 6 years. The one that had over 2 grand in it. "You psycho," I said, barely keeping my voice level. "That's my rent. That's someone else's rent. That's my license, my cards, everything." He just shrugged. "You should have been more careful with it." I looked back at Dad through the screen door. He hadn't moved. "You saw that, right? You're gonna say something." Dad didn't even blink. "You shouldn't carry that much cash anyway." That's when something inside me snapped. But I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't fight. I just went home. Sat in my car for 20 minutes with my fingers clenched around the wheel. My knuckles turned white. My throat was tight. But I didn't cry. I just started thinking. And by the time I walked into my apartment, I already knew what I was going to do. The best revenge doesn't happen in the heat of the moment. It happens when you let the fire simmer. And mine was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. I just lay there staring at the ceiling while a slow, cold wave settled over me. The kind of stillness that only shows up when you finally stop pretending someone's going to change. I wasn't just angry about the wallet or the money. It was the look in Tyler's eyes when he did it. The smugness, like he knew I wouldn't do anything about it. Like he thought he could get away with it again. But what haunted me more than anything was Dad's face. The blank expression. The apathy. Like my humiliation was just an inconvenience to be ignored. I'd expected more. Not much, maybe, but something. A flicker of disappointment. A sigh. Anything to show he still remembered which one of us had been the adult all these years. Instead, I got silence. That night was when something finally snapped. I wasn't going to be the good son anymore. The quiet one. The peacemaker. I was done handing out olive branches while they were sharpening knives behind my back. I decided I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't fight. I'd just watch. And when the time came, I'd make it count. The days that followed were weirdly quiet. Tyler didn't text. Dad didn't call. I didn't reach out either. But the silence didn't mean nothing was happening. In fact, it was the beginning of a shift I don't think they even noticed at first. The first crack came 3 days later. I was at work, trying to get through inventory prep, when I got a call from Claire, my dad's neighbor. Sweet woman. Probably in her late 60s. She'd always liked me more than Tyler, which was saying something since she'd only met us a few times. "Jake, honey," she said, voice hushed. "I don't mean to meddle, but is everything okay with your brother?" I paused, already suspicious. "Why?" "Well, he was out on the curb this morning, yelling into his phone. Something about rent money and people being late. Said he was going to come after someone if they didn't pay up." I sighed. "That sounds about right." Claire hesitated. "He mentioned your name." I froze. "What do you mean?" He said, "Let me think. Jake better come through, or I swear, I'll make him wish he had." I didn't say anything. Jake, are you in trouble? No, I said slowly. But he might be. Tyler, it turned out, had already spent the money he thought I was going to give him. Rented a rundown van from some sketchy guy off Craigslist. Paid for a custom decal, T-Rex detailing, we eat dirt alive. Because of course he did. He'd even gone as far as putting down a deposit on a shared workshop space on the outskirts of town. All without ever confirming that I was going to fund it. And now he was scrambling. I didn't respond to his texts. I didn't pick up his calls. But the messages kept coming. You're seriously going to do me like this? Do you want me to fail? You think you're better than me? You've always been jealous. That one made me laugh. Jealous of what exactly? The endless debt? The constant scrambling? The complete lack of self-awareness? Then came the voicemail. You better call me back, Jake. I'm not playing. I'll come over if I have to. I played it twice, then forwarded it to my backup drive. The next weekend, I had to visit Dad again. Not for any social reason. There were more estate forms to sign and a few last things from Mom's storage unit that needed my signature before being released. I dreaded every second of it, but I kept my face neutral and my voice polite. Like always, Dad barely acknowledged me when I came in, just pointed to the table where the forms sat. I signed them in silence. Then I asked, "Where's Tyler?" Dad grunted. "Out. Something about a business deal." I raised an eyebrow. "Did he tell you what kind of business?" Dad shrugged. "Don't start, Jake." "I'm just curious," I said calmly. "You know he dropped my wallet in a sewer last week, right?" "That was an accident," Dad muttered. "An accident?" He told me he did it on purpose. He was upset. You antagonized him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He stole from me. You saw it. And your response is that I antagonized him. Dad's eyes narrowed. He needed help. You're the one with the job, the money, the nice apartment. You could have spared some. There it was. The part they never said out loud until now. The part one always suspected. I stood still for a long second, my hand resting on the back of the dining chair. I looked at my father, really looked at him. The deep lines around his mouth. The vacant eyes. The bitter edge in his voice. It wasn't grief anymore. It was something else. Something uglier. "I've helped him more times than I can count," I said, voice quiet. "And he's never once paid me back. Not in money, not in respect, not even a simple thank you." Dad didn't reply. I think Mom would have agreed with me. That got a reaction. His jaw clenched. But he still didn't speak. I left without another word. Over the next few weeks, things escalated fast. Tyler's little business collapsed before it even started. The workshop owner kicked him out when the second payment didn't come through. The Craigslist guy reported the van as stolen after Tyler failed to sign the title over properly. And the custom decal? He tried to get a refund, but apparently yelling at a print shop manager isn't the best negotiation strategy. I stayed quiet until one afternoon, about a month after the sewer incident, when the real betrayal happened. It was a Friday. I'd taken a half day at work to meet with a financial planner. I'd recently gotten a promotion, and I was finally in a place where I could think about long-term investments. I was feeling good, hopeful even. Then I got a call from my bank. "Hi, this is Jenna from Client Security Services. We're calling about a flagged transaction on your checking account." My stomach dropped. Someone attempted to withdraw $4,800 from a branch location about 2 hours ago. They had your name, your account number, and your license. I blinked. My license? That's impossible. I stopped. It was in the wallet. The one Tyler dropped in the sewer. The one he'd joked about. My voice was flat. Was the withdrawal successful? "No, sir," she said. "Our teller noticed inconsistencies with the signature. And your account had been flagged after multiple failed online login attempts earlier this week." I didn't make any login attempts. That's what we figured. I drove straight to the branch and reviewed the security footage with the manager. It was Tyler, plain as day, wearing my license like a name tag and trying to pretend his signature matched mine. That wasn't just theft. That was fraud. I filed the report, locked the account, changed everything. And then I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for a long time. I stared at the steering wheel. I remembered Tyler as a kid, how he used to beg me to let him sneak into my room to play with my Legos. How he once cried when I told him I was moving out for college. How he hugged me after Mom's funeral, saying, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And then I remembered the sewer grate, the smirk, the voicemail, and now this. That was the breaking point. That night, I didn't sleep, but not because I was angry. Because I was planning. I was done waiting for him to hit rock bottom. I was going to hand him the shovel and make sure the hole he dug was too deep to climb out of. But it had to be quiet, precise, no mess, no traces, and I knew exactly where to start. By 6:15 a.m., everything was already in motion, and by the time the sun rose, Tyler's life as he knew it was already unraveling. But I'll get to that soon. Because what happened next? Even I didn't see it coming. You'd think that filing a police report on your own brother would feel satisfying, that some deep, long-buried sense of justice would light up inside you like a bonfire. But for me, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like grief. A slow, quiet kind. The kind that doesn't come with tears or screaming, but just sits in your chest, heavy, constant. Like a boulder you can't lift, only learn to carry. After the bank incident, I thought things might get easier, like maybe that would be the end of it. That Tyler would finally realize I wasn't going to save him anymore. That maybe Dad would finally stop acting like I was the problem. But that wasn't what happened. 2 days later, Dad called me for the first time in over a month. No greeting, no small talk, just one sentence. Did you really file charges against your own brother? I didn't respond at first. I just let the silence stretch. Then I said, he committed fraud. That's a felony. Dad huffed like I was being dramatic. You always blow things out of proportion. He made a mistake. I laughed, sharp, bitter. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is backing into a mailbox. This was theft. Identity theft. He was desperate. I stared at the wall of my apartment, the familiar pictures, the old bookshelf Mom helped me build years ago. I didn't even know what to say anymore. He stole from me, Dad. He tried to impersonate me. If the bank hadn't caught it, I'd be out almost $5 grand. Dad's voice turned cold. You're punishing him for being poor. That was the moment I realized my father didn't see us as equals. He never had. To him, Tyler was the broken one, the one who needed protection. And me? I was the one who was supposed to fix everything, no matter what it cost. So I did what I should have done a long time ago. I hung up, and I blocked his number. The fallout came fast. Tyler showed up at my condo a few nights later, pounding on the door like a maniac. I didn't answer. He left a voice message instead. 3 minutes of slurred threats and self-pity. You're ruining my life, man. All because I asked you for help. You think you're better than everyone. Just wait. Just wait. You'll regret this. I swear to God you'll. I didn't listen to the rest. I just saved the voicemail, labeled it, and filed it away. I filed everything away. Bank logs, texts, old loan receipts, copies of the failed co-signed phone bill from 2020. Even the stupid Instagram post he made bragging about getting that bread the week after he stole my wallet. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was documenting, preparing. But while I was bracing for war, life didn't pause for me. The stress leaked into everything. I started waking up at 3 a.m. with chest tightness. I was late on 2 work projects. My manager, who had always liked me, pulled me aside one day and said gently, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but I can tell you're not okay. Take a few days. Get your head right." So I did. I took 3 days off and stayed inside. No phone, no TV, just silence and coffee and a spiral notebook I found buried in my junk drawer. And I wrote. Not a novel, not a plan, just thoughts, memories, anger, regret, things I never said to Tyler, things I wanted to say to Dad, things I wished I'd told Mom before she passed, things I never even admitted to myself. It all poured out, page after page. I must have filled that notebook halfway by the time I came up for air. That was the moment I started to rise. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but quietly, privately. For the first time in years, I wasn't fixing someone else's mess. I was cleaning my own house, inside and out. I started going to the gym again. Not because I wanted abs, but because I needed somewhere to put all that tension. The ache, the fury. I lifted weights like they'd personally wronged me. I finally reconnected with old friends. People I'd pulled away from out of shame or exhaustion. One of them, Evan, had just started a new tech startup, and after a few hangouts, he asked if I'd consider consulting on their logistics system. It wasn't a full-time job, just a side gig, but it paid well and gave me something new to focus on. A spark. I reworked my finances, too. Opened new accounts. Invested more aggressively. Started planning for the future again. And the biggest change? I started therapy. Just once a week at first. I didn't expect much from it, honestly. But sitting across from someone who listened without judgment, who asked me questions no one in my family ever had. It was like someone had finally pulled a splinter from my brain I didn't even know was there. "Why do you think you kept helping him?" my therapist, Grace, asked one day. I paused, then said, "Because if I didn't, no one would." She nodded. "And what made you believe that was your responsibility?" That one sat with me for a long time. The truth is, I'd built my whole identity around being the reliable one, the fixer, the helper. I thought that was love. I thought that was what family meant. But it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear that if I stopped being useful, I'd stop being loved. And when Mom died, I stopped being useful. So they stopped trying. That realization hurt more than anything Tyler ever did. But it also freed me. Once I saw it clearly, I stopped carrying their weight. I stopped measuring my worth by their standards. And little by little, I started living for me. I built new routines. I made space for joy again. I cooked actual meals. I took walks. I bought myself a nice watch. Nothing fancy, just something that made me feel like I was allowed to own nice things. Then, about 6 weeks after the fraud attempt, I got the call. It was from Detective Morgan, the officer assigned to the case. "We've got a bit of an update for you," he said. I braced myself. "Your brother just got picked up for trying to use another fake ID at a car rental kiosk. Apparently, he was trying to book a car in your name again. But the flag on your license popped up in the system. When they ran his info, the fraud charge came up." I was quiet. "So what now?" "Well, we'll be pressing charges. But it's up to you how far you want to take it." I didn't answer right away. That night, I sat on my balcony with a beer and stared out at the city lights. I thought about Tyler sitting in a holding cell, probably blaming everyone but himself. I thought about Dad, too, wondering if he was angry or if he even cared. And then I thought about the day I found out Mom had died. How Tyler had been the one to call me. How he was sobbing, genuinely sobbing. "I can't do this without her," he'd said. And for a moment, I believed him. But the truth was, he wasn't crying for Mom. He was crying because she wasn't there to protect him anymore. And I wasn't going to do it in her place. I called Detective Morgan back the next morning. "I want to proceed," I said. "Understood," he replied. "We'll keep you updated." Things moved quickly after that. Tyler was released on bond, but a court date was set. I didn't attend the hearing in person, just submitted my evidence and statements. The bank records, the voicemail, the footage. My lawyer said it was airtight. And it was. Tyler pled guilty to attempted fraud and received 6 months probation and mandatory counseling. No jail time. Partly because it was his first formal offense, but the charge would stay on his record. Dad didn't call me once. Not to yell. Not to defend him. Not even to ask why. That silence. That was the real sentence. And still, somehow, it didn't hurt anymore. Because by then, I wasn't standing in their shadow anymore. I was standing on my own. A few months later, I got promoted again. This time to Regional Logistics Coordinator. Better pay. Better hours. I moved into a new apartment. One with a balcony that overlooked the river. I furnished it with care. Bought plants. A decent espresso machine. Even framed some of my old notebook pages. Not because they were deep or poetic. Most of them were angry scribbles. But because they reminded me where I'd been. What I'd survived. And what I'd built without anyone's help. One morning, I checked my mail and found a letter with no return address. Just my name. Inside was a single piece of paper, torn from a notebook. No greeting. No apology. Just 4 words. "You never loved me." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I folded the paper once, slid it back into the envelope, and dropped it in the trash. Because the truth was, he was right. I tried. God, I tried. For years, I tried. But love without respect? That's not love. That's a leash. And I wasn't wearing it anymore. But if you think that's where it ends, you'd be wrong. Because Tyler wasn't done. Not yet. The next blow came when I least expected it. And it wasn't just about me. It was about someone I actually cared about. And this time, he went too far. Way too far. When Tyler crossed the line from being a toxic brother to a criminal liability, something inside me shifted permanently. The days of playing the reluctant adult in a broken family drama were over. He didn't just betray me financially. He tried to steal my identity, my security, my peace of mind. And now, with him finally convicted of attempted fraud, I should have felt like the worst was behind me. But Tyler never knew when to stop. 3 months after his sentencing, just when life was settling back into something resembling normal, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years. "Jake." Her voice was soft, familiar. Ella. Ella was an ex. The kind of ex you don't talk about often because it still aches, even years later. We dated for almost 2 years, back when I was in my mid-20s. She'd been everything I wasn't, spontaneous, artistic, full of life. We broke up because she wanted to move out west to pursue photography full-time, and I was too buried in work and family drama to follow her. We parted on good terms, but we hadn't spoken since. I wasn't sure if I should call, she said. But I thought you'd want to know. Know what? She hesitated. Tyler messaged me. I felt my stomach drop. What? He found my photography page and sent me a long message. Said you were spreading lies about him. That you ruined his life and sabotaged his future. He said you were dangerous. I had to sit down. I blocked him, she continued. But he sent another message through a different account. He even mentioned stuff only someone close to you would know. Stuff from back when we were together. Why would he come after you? She exhaled. I think he's trying to get to you through me. And just like that, the final straw wasn't just planted. It was driven into the ground like a flag. Tyler wasn't just self-destructing anymore. He was actively trying to drag me down with him. Even from the outside, even with probation hanging over his head, he wanted to remind me he could still reach in and poison something I cared about. He wasn't going to stop, unless I made him. Not just through legal consequences. Not just through blocking and ignoring. I needed to dismantle the world he operated in. The little ecosystem of pity and favoritism that had allowed him to float through life untouched. And I knew exactly where to start. Dad, the man who always turned a blind eye, who funded Tyler's failures and called it support, who justified every betrayal as a misunderstanding. Dad had enabled him for 31 years. If I was going to cut the rod out, I couldn't just target Tyler. I had to expose the whole foundation. And I already had the ammo. Over the past year, I've been quietly collecting everything. Every debt, every voicemail, every favor Tyler had begged for and never paid back. I had bank records, texts, even a copy of the forged withdrawal form with his fake signature. But more than that, I had patterns, a trail. So I started mapping it all out. Not in a notebook this time, but digitally, meticulously. I made a timeline of Tyler's financial wreckage, when he borrowed money, what he promised, when he ghosted. I included the time he totaled Dad's car and blamed a ghost driver. The fake GoFundMe he set up 3 years ago for surgery, that never happened. The dozens of unpaid gigs he took from mutual friends and then vanished from. I tracked every instance and tied it to screenshots, audio clips, even pulled photos from his own social media to prove location and date. Then, I put it all in a single, clean document. A dossier. Professional. Cold. Unarguable. And then I waited. I needed an opportunity. Something that would bring everyone together at once. A moment where the mask couldn't be worn and denial couldn't be hidden behind phone calls or texts. That opportunity came in the form of Dad's birthday. He was turning 65, retirement age. And despite everything, he still hadn't formally retired. Probably because Tyler needed the money to keep flowing. But this time, Dad was throwing a party. I'm just inviting close friends and family, he said in the group text. No drama, please. I wasn't going to go at first. I hovered over the delete button for 10 straight minutes. But then I realized this was it. The setup. The moment where I could make a point so loud, so calculated, that even Tyler couldn't spin it. So I replied, sure, I'll be there. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. First, I met with a lawyer. Not because I was planning to sue anyone, yet, but because I wanted everything I had to be ironclad. Verified. Ready for scrutiny. She helped me structure it all as a formal report, just in case I ever needed to present it in a civil case. Then I reached out to a few of Tyler's burned bridges, a friend he'd stiffed for $800 in a group trip, a girl he ghosted after borrowing her car and returning it with a dent, even a cousin he scammed into paying for a non-existent DJ gig. I didn't frame it as revenge. I just told them I was compiling a financial history and asked if they'd be willing to contribute statements. Most were eager. One of them even forwarded an audio recording Tyler left during a drunken rant where he said, Jake's not family anymore. He's just a paycheck I lost. That one went right into the front of the file. By the day of the party, the folder had grown fat, digitally and physically. I had a PDF version on a thumb drive, a printed copy in a clean black binder, and a backup stored in the cloud under a pseudonym. I wasn't taking chances. The party itself was held at a local event hall. Nothing fancy, just tables, banners, and cheap catering. But there were maybe 50 people there. Friends of Dad's, old co-workers, neighbors, even a couple of distant aunts I hadn't seen since Mom's funeral. And Tyler, of course. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Eyes bloodshot, wearing an ill-fitting blazer, a forced smile plastered on his face like a poorly glued mask. He gave me a look when I walked in, equal parts panic and contempt. He hadn't expected me to show. I nodded politely, walked past him, sat near the front. I waited for the toasts to start. Dad was glowing in the attention, soaking in the praise. Tyler kept hovering around him, playing the dutiful son, probably hoping some rich friend of Dad's would pull him aside and offer him a job or pity gig. When the host asked if anyone else wanted to speak, I stood. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. No clinking of glasses. No clearing of throats. Just me, calmly walking up to the microphone. I held up the black binder. I'm Jake. Most of you know me. I'm Richard's son. People nodded. A few clapped politely. I just wanted to share a few things about my brother Tyler. The room shifted. Eyes darted. Tyler froze mid-sip of his drink. I smiled. Some of you may have lent him money. Some of you may have heard stories about me sabotaging him. And I just want to say, I believe in clarity. I opened the binder. This is a record of every financial, legal, and personal favor Tyler has received and defaulted on since 2014. Verified by receipts, screenshots, and personal statements. It includes fraud charges, unpaid debts, scams, and abusive messages. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I'm not here to embarrass him. I'm here because I've been painted as the villain for too long. Because our father has spent over a decade defending him at my expense. And because some people still believe Tyler is just misunderstood. I looked directly at Dad. I just wanted to make sure everyone had the facts. And with that, I stepped down, left the binder on the main table, and walked out. I didn't need to stay for the fallout. I already knew it had started. Because the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be seen. But if you think that was the end, if you think Tyler just slunk off and disappeared, you don't know my brother. Because what he did next wasn't just desperate. It was dangerous. He didn't leave the party quietly. I'd barely made it back to my car when the screaming started behind me. You think this makes you a hero? Tyler shouted from the doorway of the hall, his voice cracked and desperate, arms flailing like a drowning man who'd just realized the water was too deep. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. By the time I got home that evening, my phone had 6 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and 3 block number texts filled with nonsense like, "You ruined everything. You'll regret this. I swear. You just made an enemy for life." But here's the thing about Tyler. He'd never been subtle. Not once in his life. And in the weeks after the party, his spiral didn't slow down. It accelerated. Fast. He lost his freelance detailing clients. Turns out, a conviction for attempted fraud isn't great for business. He tried to pin it all on me, of course, claiming I'd doctored the evidence, but the people who mattered, Dad's friends, old coworkers, even family, had seen the binder. They'd read the quotes, heard the recordings. One uncle even asked for a copy of the PDF so he could send it to a guy Tyler had owed money to for 3 years. Dad didn't speak to me after the party, but I heard through the grapevine that his retirement gift, a small consulting gig at his old firm, got rescinded the following Monday. Apparently, the partners didn't feel comfortable being associated with a man who defended a known fraudster in front of 50 witnesses. I'd expected Dad to reach out, to yell, to accuse. He didn't. He just went silent. And honestly, that stung more than if he'd screamed. But it also confirmed everything I needed to know. I wasn't his son. Not really. I was his scapegoat. And now that I wasn't willing to wear the blame anymore, I was nothing to him. Fine. I could live with that. But Tyler couldn't. He wasn't just embarrassed. He was enraged. So he did the one thing I wasn't expecting. He tried to get revenge. Messy, desperate revenge. At first, it was small stuff, petty sabotage attempts. Someone keyed my car one night while I was parked outside the gym. A fake Yelp review popped up on the startup I consulted for, claiming I was stealing client data. The IP address, traced to a public Wi-Fi hub 1 block from Dad's house. I didn't flinch. I just documented it. Every email, every message, every fake review. I even installed a dash cam after the car incident, which paid off when it caught Tyler himself tossing a cup of soda onto my windshield a week later. And that's when I stopped reacting defensively and started pulling strings. Because here's something Tyler never figured out. While he was torching bridges and begging for bailouts, I'd been building quiet relationships with people who knew how the system worked. And now, I had names, emails, leverage. It started with the probation officer. I sent a formal complaint with the timestamped dashcam video and a signed affidavit outlining the ongoing harassment, the voicemail threats, the IP address links, everything. The officer responded professionally, but firmly. Thank you for your detailed documentation. We will be reviewing this case for potential probation violation. Then I contacted the county detective from the original fraud charge. He remembered me, and he didn't like repeat offenders, especially ones who used identity theft twice. He looped in a cybercrimes liaison, and suddenly, Tyler's little fake review stunt, that became evidence of defamation and digital harassment against not just me, but the business I was affiliated with. That's when it stopped being just a sibling squabble. It became a legal pattern, a real case. Within a week, Tyler was back in front of a judge. His attorney, some court-appointed guy with dark circles under his eyes and a visible tremor, tried to paint it all as brotherly misunderstandings. But the evidence said otherwise. 3 counts of harassment, 1 count of digital defamation, and a clear violation of probation. The judge wasn't amused. I gave you an opportunity, she said, tone clipped, and you spat in the court's face. Result? Probation revoked. Sentence converted to 90 days in county jail. No bail. The day Tyler was taken into custody, I got a text from an unknown number. You finally happy? I didn't reply, but I saved the number anyway, just in case. Fallout came quickly after that. Dad, now isolated and disgraced, sent me a letter. Not a call. Not an email. A letter. It was short. 4 sentences. I don't know what you think you've accomplished. Family should stick together, no matter what. You've made enemies you'll regret. Don't come to my funeral. No signature. No return address. I folded it once. Put it in the back of my filing cabinet. Not out of sentiment, but because I wanted to remember the exact moment I stopped chasing approval that was never coming. In the weeks that followed, I finished out the consulting gig and was offered a full-time position with stock options. The company liked my attention to detail, my integrity, my cool head under pressure. I said yes. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just dipping my toes in. But it felt good to laugh with someone. To talk about movies and books instead of lawsuits and bank statements. I even visited Mom's grave for the first time in over a year. I brought coffee, sat down, told her everything. I like to think she would have been proud, not just because I stood up for myself, but because I did it without becoming bitter. I didn't burn everything to the ground, just the parts that were already rotten. Tyler served 68 days before being released for good behavior. He moved in with some friend of a friend an hour away. I heard he was working warehouse shifts now. Manual labor. No license. No car. No business. No one left to blame. And Dad, he sold the house. Retired somewhere upstate. Never sent a forwarding address. Fine by me. The past, I've learned, doesn't always need closure. Sometimes it just needs distance. Now, when I think about my family, I don't feel guilt, or rage, or longing. I feel clean. Like I walked out of a burning house that everyone else swore was safe, and somehow, I made it out without a single scar. Just smoke on my clothes. And a story, one I'm finally done telling. Because the truth is, some people don't deserve your silence. And some bridges aren't meant to be crossed. They're meant to be burned.